I think we're just really not want to talk about it. We feel uncomfortable, embarrassed talking about extending lifespan and delaying aging. For many people, it's even sacrilegious. Really lucky to be born. It's a life I once debated embraced. The bioethics advisor to President George W. Bush and a life on national radio worth prolonging. His point in good health to the audience and to me was, aging is natural. When we're all very young, it's part of the way of life. In fact, it makes life worth living. All our loved ones will be around forever. But then we learn that that's not true. Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, these are natural. My daughter Madeline, and we do everything we can to prevent and slow these diseases down. When she was 4 years old, I was putting her to bed, 99, and she said, "Daddy, will you always be around to protect trying to slow down these diseases?" Man, which actually even almost brings a tear to my eye right now. I think anyone who's been a parent knows how this, if we're lucky, affects all of us. And I said to her, I had to be honest. I said, I'm sorry. So you might ask, one day, well, why don't we just continue what we're doing? Like everybody, why don't we just study individual diseases? And I will die. That's what we've always done. And I watched her eyes well up. And but you may not know really big hug. That the rate, but then I told her of aging, what we all tell our children, which is just don't think about it. And so she did. What I mean by that is that we've developed many medicines that actually, I think, can treat part of our body, in our lives. Say our hearts. We all try to forget about this truth. But our brains, and ironically, I believe this is preventing us. So we've ended up with realizing are the lives we could actually just use my grandmother as an example. A nation of elderly, my grandmother, whose hearts are working well, for example, she's an amazing lady. Their brains are no longer functioning. She saved lives, and this is a major problem. She escaped persecution from Hungary and fled to Australia. What we need, she had a wonderful medicines of humor, a love of life, body's parts working, and at the same time, spent a lot of time raising me. And if we just, and she never wanted me to call her grandma. The problem is that some other part will break down. She hated the idea. We're just switching out growing old, and I don't think this is the right way to go about it. Grow old. She's watched herself grow old too, and she used to apologize to me for it. A few months ago, I heard that she fell over in her apartment and she broke the top of her femur. She went straight to hospital. They operated on her. Her heart stopped in the operation. And I arrived in Sydney with my son, Ben, 5 years old, to say goodbye to her. She was there, just a shell of the woman she once was. She had a feeding tube coming out her nose. She barely knew who anybody was. And I thought, this thing we call aging, why aren't we up in arms about it? And this once vibrant woman reduced to this. It's incredible. And this is just my story, but this is being played out every day in everybody's family. Actually, this really brings it certainly home. Not an isolated case. No, we're always in fact, I don't want to be a downer, but our medicines are making something like it healthier for longer. To all our loved ones, including all of us. The amount and that's actually the best case scenario that we are spending in good health is actually decreasing in terms of percentage. No wonder healthcare costs. I think we all know that aging is important. What we need, for example, the World Health Organization recently put out a report. So I'm not talking about living for 500 years. That aging is one of the biggest problems in the press of our generation. What I am talking about, unless we do something, is an ability for us to live into our 90s and our 100s in a healthy way. The cost is going to crush national infrastructures. And our way of life, our economies are going to fall. And this is what the governments are saying. But what you may not realize is of our time. A fraction of just 1% let me tell you, medical work that I've been doing is devoted about how understanding why we age, get at the root cause of aging. And even less is devoted to trying to do something about it. I earned a PhD in Sydney. Is a major I headed off to Boston to a place called MIT. What I think is going on is to understand why yeast cells, little budding yeast, it's really quite weird. Bread and beer. I noticed many of you chuckled when because I think if we couldn't figure this out, I think we're just cell, we had no hope of understanding why we grow old. Really not want to talk about it. We feel uncomfortable, embarrassed talking about extending lifespan. Even though there were critics of this approach, the critics, there were even Nobel Prize winners who told me, this is not. I once debated to go about aging. The bioethics advisor get to President gray hair, they don't get heart disease, they don't get cancer on national radio. But I ignored them, fortunately, and to me was quite naive. Aging is natural. It's part of the way of life. And in the next few years, what we discovered as a group was that yeast cells do in fact grow old. And one of the reasons Alzheimer's, that their genes disease, cancer, these are natural. As and we do everything we can to prevent and slow these diseases down. So every cell has 99 genes. We all know that. Medical research in every one of your cells. Same number of trying genes, to slow down these diseases on at the same time, which actually they need to be kept on and off. Tell what type of cell is in the liver and what type of cell is in the brain. If we're lucky, what we found was these yeast cells, as they got older, after about a week, all the genes started to come on. Why don't we just continue what we're doing? Why don't we just study individual diseases? Now we could find genes that could actually slow that process down. We could find genes that switch off those genes and silence them of aging. And this led to a discovery of a longevity gene is actually called decreasing. SIR2. And SIR2 what I mean by stands for silent is that information regulator. Developed many medicines that actually can treat part of our body. So in 1999, we started very good at keeping our hearts lab at Harvard Medical School. But our brains still aged. I was 29 and figured I could change the world. It was really exciting. We soon discovered that there are 7 of my grandmother's longevity genes in our bodies. A nation of elderly whose hearts are working well. So the sirtuins have risen to scientific prominence. But their brains are no longer functioning. Thousands of papers on these now. And this is a major problem. And what we've learned is that they seem to protect our body against diseases of aging. What we need. So, for example, if you put extra copies of these genes in parts working yeast and at the same time worms and flies and mice, and if they do a lot one part of our body, the problem is that they live longer will break down in a healthy state. We're just switching out diseases. So what we need to do is this is the right ways to tweak to go about it to make them more active, and in that way we might be able to delay. This really brings it home that we get as we get older. Now we're always taught even that reverse aging. Our medicines are making us healthier for longer. So let me explain what the sirtuins do in our body. And I have been very fortunate that we are spending in good health is actually decreasing in terms of percentage. There's a new idea about aging. No wonder healthcare costs, and that is that are going up. As we get older, what we need to do are switched on and off in the wrong way for longer. So when we're young, there's a beautiful symphony playing for 500 years. But as we get older, I see that sometimes quoted in the press. The orchestra starts to play willy-nilly and screw things up. Is an ability for us to live until our 90s and our 100s. We stretch up in a healthy way. That's the DNA, all twirled up there in gray. The pink blobs are proteins called histones that the DNA is unless we do something about red means the gene is off. And I would argue the problem is the great aging is that chemicals come in and stick to the histones. Let me tell you about the work that I've been doing. Genes on. So that's what the green lights mean. How I think the gene that should be off get at the root cause of aging. My grandmother is now coming on. So when I was in my 20s, terrible thing. I earned a PhD this gene in Sydney, happened to be a gene headed off the liver to be a liver cell, to a place and now it's on in the brain to understand why yeast and that's what we think budding yeast that we use to make bread and beer of why they grow aging. Because I figured if we couldn't figure this out for a yeast cell, we had no hope of understanding why we grow old. Mutations, these irreversible changes to our DNA, I did, are what cause aging. And even though there were critics of this approach, the critics that were even Nobel Prize winners who told me this is not. So let me show you how about aging. Yeast cells don't get gray hair, they don't get heart disease, they don't get cancer. They actually make proteins that I'm going to show them for a cartoon of. It's going to look like a Pac-Man. And what the sirtuin proteins do in our body, in the next few years, what we discovered as a group was that yeast cells do in fact grow. And now the gene that was, and one of the reasons is in the old that their genes will start to switch on off again as they get older. And that's what the sirtuins are doing in our bodies right now. Is that so every cell has a stimulated set number of genes. We all know don't eat in every one of your cells. And when we exercise, same number of genes. And if we eat, they're not all switched on a large hamburger. We shut them down again. On and off. It's not good. Tell what type of cell is in the brain. So what we wanted to do was to find a way to turn this system on. What we found was that these yeast cells, find a molecule that could be taken in a little pill. All the genes started to come on these, and they died. And now we could find genes that could actually slow that process down. Keep these diseases of aging at bay, keep our whole body healthy, and silence them. And we might even do a discovery of a longevity gene. Reverse aspects of aging. SIR2, and SIR2 stands for silent. So as I said, information. I was in Boston, and things were looking really interesting. I started in 1999. It started based on a new lab at Harvard Medical Discovery that there were molecules. I was 29, and these enzymes. Figured I could change the world. 10 years ago, really we found, which got a lot of. We soon discovered that there are 7 of these longevity genes in our bodies. We call these resveratrolins. And so the sirtuins have risen to scientific prominence. That's a hard word. There's thousands of papers on these now. And so resveratrol, and what we've learned is that they seem to protect our body against diseases is in red wine. Now, so for example, if you put extra copies of these genes into 100 glasses of red wine a day, little nematode worms and flies and mice. No, I don't recommend that. They do a lot better. In fact, don't do that. In most cases, they live longer in a healthy state. But what we clearly needed was a what we need to do is something that's more effective, more potent than resveratrol to make them more active. And this company, and in that way, we might be able to delay. And they set to find the diseases that we get is better than resveratrol. And possibly they found ones that were 100 times more potent than the red wine molecule. So let me explain what the sirtuins do in our body. And I have animals. I've been very fortunate that I'm talking about mice. They were much healthier. Videos here. They didn't get heart disease. There's a new idea about they were protected against Alzheimer's. And that is they're protected against cancer. As we get older, it was extremely genes are switched on and off. They even started human trials. So when we're young, there's a beautiful symphony playing. And there are, as we get older, already hints just little instruments that actually the starts to play willy-nilly and screw things up. Same way as resveratrol. So if we zoom into the cell, you'll see a chromosome. If we stretch out the chromosome, that's the DNA, all 12
So
at that point, everything looked great. I thought the pink blobs
the
are
world is going to be
proteins
different
in my lifetime.
that the DNA is
we don't have
packaged
to
in.
worry. This is going to
Red means
work
the
out.
gene is off.
And then the bottom
fell out
during aging is that chemicals come
What happened
and
was,
stick to the histones.
A few years
and
ago,
turn the genes
the world's
on. So that's
largest
what the green
pharmaceutical
lights mean.
company
This gene that should be
put
off
out a scientific
in the
paper
brain
of
of my
said
grandmother that is
all
now
of
coming
this
on.
science
And that's
was
a terrible
wrong.
thing and dead wrong.
If this gene happened
That
to be a gene
resveratrol
that
told
told
the liver to be a liver
work
cell,
on
and now
these
it's on in the
proteins.
brain, you can
In
imagine
fact,
another
the
group said
problem,
that
and that's what we
sirtuins have
think
nothing to do with aging.
maybe a large part
It
of
was a
what happens
really
during aging.
depressing
This
time
leads to
of
a
my
really
life.
important possibility.
I had emails from
We used to think that
top scientists
mutations,
sending me
these
condolences.
irreversible changes to our
the
DNA
clinical trials
are
were
what
put on
cause aging.
hold.
But in fact,
if it's this,
I thought I'd
this
let my
what we
lab
call an
down. I thought
epigenetic
I'd let
change.
Australia down.
That's reversible.
I thought I'd let the whole world
So let me show you
down.
how we can reverse it.
And
there were days
So
where I
these
really just wanted to
sirtuins,
quit being a scientist.
they actually make proteins
that I'm going
But
to
the
show
good news
a cartoon of.
was
It's going to look like a
the silver lining
Pac-Man.
was that it
And
forced
what the
us in the lab
sirtuin
to go
proteins
back
do in
and
our
really
bodies is that they
understand
clip
how
off
did resveratrol and these other
these
synthetic
chemical groups
drugs
See?
actually work.
And now the gene that was
So I pulled
on
together
in the
a
old
group of
person,
scientists, there were about 30
green
of us,
goes off
and we
again.
set to work to understand
And that's what the sirtuins are
what
doing
was
in our
true.
bodies right now.
And what we've discovered
They're stimulated
that resveratrol
naturally
really does
when we don't
bind
eat
to that Pac-Man
and when we
and
exercise.
sticks on the back
and
of
if we
it
eat
and makes it
a large
jump
hamburger,
faster.
we shut
And
them down
that
again.
is
This
how
is
they
not
all
good.
work. We were surprised. We
So
didn't
what we
realize
wanted to
that
do was to
resveratrol and these drugs
find a
all
way
work
to
the same
turn
way.
the system
But
on.
they do. It was
Find a
amazing.
molecule that could be taken
And
in
so
a
the
little
clinical
pill
trials have started up
and
again.
turn on
and I'm
these
hopeful that one day,
sirtuin enzymes.
hopefully not
And then
in the
we-
too distant
thereby we
future,
could
there will
clip
be
off
medicines,
these
chemical groups, and that we can take,
keep
So
these
a little
diseases
pill,
of aging at
I've got
bay
an
and keep our
example
whole
of what
body
it might
healthy.
look like. We might take
We
one
might
of
eat
these
them
with
one day.
breakfast, in theory,
And that could
reverse
ward off the
aspects of
diseases of
aging.
aging until much later and keep us
So
healthier
as I
and
said,
functioning.
I was in Boston, and
So I really
things were
look
looking
forward to a
really
day when this
interesting.
happens. And when it does,
I started a company
I believe that we're going to
that
look
was
back
based
at today
on,
like we do
the discovery
people
that there were
400
molecules
years ago
that could activate these
when people would
enzymes.
die from an
The
infected
one 10
splinter,
years ago that we found, which got a
which
lot
in
of
those
media
days, as you might
attention,
recall, was perfectly
was
natural.
from red wine. It's called resveratrol.
And I not only believe that we have a
And,
right to use this new
don't ask me
technology to help
say that again. That's a hard
ourselves and
word.
our loved ones,
Resveratrol.
I believe we have a duty.
And so resveratrol,
a financial and an
as you
ethical
probably
one. And if you don't believe
probably
me,
heard, is in
just
red
ask
wine.
any 4-year-old.
Now, the problem with that is that you'd need to
Thank
drink
you very
about
much.
100 glasses of red wine a day.
No, I don't recommend that. Don't do that.
But what we clearly needed was a drug that would do this, something that's more effective, more potent than resveratrol. And this company, they raised a lot of money, and they set to find molecules that were even better than resveratrol. They found ones that were 100 times more potent than the red wine molecule. They put them into animals, and these animals, I'm talking about mice, they were much healthier. They didn't get heart disease. They were protected against Alzheimer's. They were protected against cancer.
I sang
It was extremely exciting.
in the bus
They
to the
even started
speakers. They
human
put me on a
trials,
bus
and the molecules
this morning
appeared
from the
safe.
hotel.
And there were
And,
already hints,
and
just
I
little
sang
hints
a
that
good
actually
morning
these
song.
molecules were working
You know, good
the
morning
same
to
way
you.
as
Good-
resveratrol
Your
was
questions to
working
each other every day
to
are more
prevent
complex
these
than that.
diseases of aging.
So how
So
do
at that
we
point,
have a
everything looked
conversation?
great. I thought the world is going to be different in my lifetime. We don't have to worry. This is going to all work out. And then the bottom fell out. What happened was, a few years ago, the world's largest pharmaceutical company put out a scientific paper that said that all of this science was wrong, dead wrong. That resveratrol did not work on these proteins. In fact, another group said that sirtuins have nothing to do with aging. It was a really depressing time of my life. I had emails from top scientists sending me condolences. The clinical trials were put on hold. I thought I'd let my lab down. I thought I'd let Australia down. I thought I'd let the whole world down. And there were days where I really just wanted to quit being a scientist. But the good news was, the silver lining was that it forced us in the lab to go back and really understand how did resveratrol and these other synthetic drugs actually work. So I pulled together a group of scientists, there were about 30 of us, and we set to work to understand what was true. And what we've discovered is that resveratrol really does bind to that Pac-Man and sticks on the back of it and makes it jump faster. And that is how they all work. We were surprised. We didn't realize that resveratrol and these drugs would all work the same way, but they do. It was amazing. And so the clinical trials have started up again, and I'm hopeful that one day, hopefully not in the too distant future, there will be medicines that we can take. Say a little pill. I've got an example of what it might look like. We might take one of these with breakfast, and that could ward off the diseases of aging until much later and keep us healthier and functioning. So I really look forward to a day when this happens, and when it does, I believe that we're going to look back at today like we do people from 100 years ago, when people would die from an infected splinter, which in those days, as you might recall, was perfectly natural. And I not only believe that we have a right to use this new technology to help ourselves and our loved ones, I believe we have a duty, a financial and an ethical one. And if you don't believe me, just ask any 4-year-old. Thank you very much.